This is James Corbett of CorbettReport.com, welcoming you back to Economics 101. Today I'm joined on the line by Lew Rockwell, perhaps the best-known advocate for libertarianism in the world today. He founded the Mises Institute in 1982, published the Journal of Libertarian Studies for over 20 years, and runs the very popular website LewRockwell.com. Mr. Rockwell, thank you very much for joining me today.
Mr. Corbett, it's an honor to be with you.
Well, Mr. Rockwell, back in March, you published an article on LewRockwell.com called Beating Back Obamanomics, where you defined the Obama regime's economic policy as one of radical socialist interventionism. And you called the Obama economic team, quote, both deeply ignorant and horribly evil, unquote. Well, you're clearly not one to hold back your punches. So what have you either seen out of the Obama camp in the intervening 7 months to either deepen or to change that understanding that you came up with in March?
Well, if we think of Obamanomics, it's sort of, I don't know, the crudest form of hyper-Keynesianism. I mean, just the idea, I don't know, it's some sort of just very basic view that whatever government spends on is wonderful, and of course, government is a redistributionist enterprise, always, no matter who's running it, whether it's Bush or Nixon or Obama or Clinton or whatever. Everything the government does is redistributionist. So there's that aspect to Obama, but there's also the view that just spend. I mean, I don't think there's ever been an administration in American history, and there have been some terrible ones, of course, that had quite the view that just spend, print, have the Federal Reserve just do it. Now, again, they're building on what happened in the past. This is why Bush got virtually no opposition to his starting 2 new wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, because no taxes were required, no borrowing was required. They just printed the money. So Obama's taken this and he's taken it to a new height. But I do have to say that I think that while Obama is a different figure than Bush, and the president has an influence on what the U.S. government does, still the sort of the governing oligarchy is basically the same. I mean, if we look at who Obama's big campaign contributors were, it was people like Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan, and he surrounded himself with the same sorts of people, whether it's Geithner and Summers and the rest of them, who are really no different from Hank Paulson and the people that Bush surrounded himself with. So we have this same cartel in power, but they're stepping it up because they believe that they can just spend and print without end, and that's the path to prosperity and power for themselves. And it certainly is the path to prosperity and power for themselves, just not for the American people, or in fact for the people of the world.
Well, let's take a look at some of the people who are behind Obamanomics then. You identified John Maynard Keynes as the ideologue behind the massive interventionism that we see taking place in the economy today. But who are the people who are actually implementing it in the current day and age under Obama? When we talk about Reaganomics, for example, we're talking about people like Arthur Laffer or Paul Craig Roberts, or when we're talking about Austrian School of Economics, we're talking about obviously people like Ludwig von Mises or Murray Rothbard. So who are the ideologues behind Obama, and what is their background? Where are they coming from?
Well, they come, mostly from Wall Street. I mean, from some aspect of the banking industry, the big banks. Nobody's coming from some little Main Street bank in a little town in Minnesota, for example. They're all connected to the big New York banks. They come from Wall Street. They come from the exact same sorts of people that the Bush have been. Look at a guy like Tim Geithner, a fixture of the permanent regime his whole life, whether he was working in the in international banking circles, whether he was working as head of the New York Fed. He worked for any number of different government agencies, and now he's been vaulted to the top as Treasury Secretary. He's somebody who could have been, he's a technocrat, but he's a Keynesian technocrat, and he's a guy who believes that it's the job of the U.S. government to tax the American people, really harm the people of the world by depreciating the dollar in order to benefit the banks and the the big investment banks on Wall Street and the big commercial banks, although those lines are, of course, becoming dimmed as Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan became commercial banks just overnight during a previous point in this whole crisis. Anybody who's ever been involved in actual banking knows that it takes years to get approval to become a bank. This happened, of course, just like in a day. These institutions were made banks so that they could get unlimited amounts of money from the Federal Reserve. This is all hidden. This is why Ron Paul has done such a yeoman's work in talking about why we need more transparency with the Federal Reserve. Now, Dr. Paul, like myself, thinks that central banking is an inherently illegitimate institution designed to prevent fractional reserve banks from going bankrupt and enable them to do all kinds of terrible things to the economy at a profit to themselves. So there's the Federal Reserve, all central banks, the Bank of England, the Bank of Canada, they all are fundamentally immoral and destructive institutions. You can't that lie about why they're in existence. But if we're going to have such an institution, certainly everything they do should not be in secret. So we should be able to know, since it impacts the lives of average people, we should be able to know what is J.P. Morgan, what is Goldman Sachs getting from the Fed. When they go to the Federal Reserve and they get dough, how much are they getting? What is it for? But this is all hidden from us, and we're told we can't know. It's too important for us peons to know about these things. So Ron has done a tremendous job in helping tear a little bit of the curtain away from the front of the Federal Reserve. We need to take the whole curtain away and at least know what the heck they're doing. If we were to know that, and this is why they fight so hard against this, if we were to know it, then we would have the Federal Reserve would be in trouble. They would not be able to do the things they're doing if the American people and, in fact, competitive institutions would know who's benefiting and how. But Ron they've gutted his bill just recently. It's apparently not going to go through. I don't think that's no surprise to anyone. But the work of telling the truth about the Federal Reserve, the idea that the American people, I must say, I've been interested in central banking all my life. Very seldom could you get anybody interested in it. Ron Paul in his presidential campaign and since then has interested millions of people, young people especially, in the Fed, in the fact that they are being ripped off, that their future is being destroyed for the benefit of, the big banks, the federal government, and it's the military-industrial complex, all the people who live off the government and live off the Fed. They are being benefited, and the average working guy or working gal is being stepped on. So we need to change that. I think it is changing. It's an extraordinary thing to see young people of all ages interested for the first time in what central banking is, what it does, and why it is so damaging to a free economy and a free society.
Well, then let's project forward into the future a little bit. What's your prognosis for America if the White House keeps on its current track?
Well, I think they're going to wreck the dollar. I think maybe that's already happened, and we just haven't seen the results yet. So when the dollar is not the reserve currency anymore, when other countries go more and more to the euro or to some other currency, the yen or whatever, it's going to drastically diminish the power of the U.S. to run the world. I mean, the U.S. government sees itself as the world government. It would like to run everything. This is coming to an end. The empire is going to come to an end. They're not going to be able to occupy and run other countries. This is a very good thing, even though the death of the dollar is going to be very bad for all of us regular people.
Well, tell people how they can find out more about yourself and your work.
Well, they take a look at my site, lewrockwell.com, lewrockwell.com. It's a daily information and opinion site. Also take a look at the more scholarly Mises.org, MISES.org, a fantastic treasure trove of free market economics, videos, audios, Murray Rothbard, many other great people, hundreds and hundreds of books, all available for download for free. If you want to know about real economics, you go to Mises.org. If you want to know about current political and economic developments in terms of what the regime is doing, take a look at LewRockwell.com.
Lew Rockwell, thank you for joining me today.
Sir, thank you.